Hello everyone and welcome to CodeCast by STL Tech Talk. We are going to bring you the content you want and need: instructional, informative, unique, and insightful commentary on programming, code, and technology. Coming to you live from Robots to Roadhouses, my name is JJ Hammond and I'm joined tonight by two coding experts. Up first, our guest, process hacker, culture hacker, passionate about family, working with people, solving problems, coaching, teaching, agile, lean, and continuous improvement. He has worked in a variety of roles using agile and lean principles and practices to improve teams and organizations and delight customers. Depending on the project or client, this could include roles such as agile coaching, agile project management, requirements and system analysis, using agile techniques, agile testing, development workshops, seminars, etc. A big promoter of agile. If I haven't said agile enough, I'm going to say it 5 times more just to be funny. Lean techniques by speaking and volunteering at conferences and user groups, the amazing Steve Rogalsky. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight, sir.
That was quite the intro. Thank you. Agile.
Thank you. However, this show would not be possible, and I truly mean that, without the coolest guy I know, and striving to bring development knowledges to the masses, and spent the last 20 years architecting and implementing highly scalable ASP.NET applications. Travels all around the U.S. now. Our very own Gus Emery. Hello, Gus, and how are you doing tonight, sir?
How are you doing? Just well. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Yep.
Steve, welcome on board. I can't wait to have some Agile chats with you tonight. I think this is going to be a great topic. Thanks for joining us.
If you're drinking, every time we say Agile, we'll probably put you in the hospital. And don't forget, you can follow us on hashtag CodeCast on Twitter or at STL CodeCast. Also, you can find us on Facebook, STL Tech Talk, Google+, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Windows Phone, TuneIn, Radio, or listen directly from the site. And don't forget, you can keep up with our news and information, podcast, CodeCast, at stltechtalk.com. Everybody go there. And don't forget, you can interact with the live show by sending us feedback to podcast at stltechtalk.com. And if you're watching us live, you can ask us questions via the chat room, and we'll do our very best to answer those questions in a timely manner. Special thank you goes out tonight to Jessica Carr. That girl, man, I tell you what, she was a really great guest last week, and what a great show. Solid downloads, great numbers, and everybody was really just enjoyed it. We even got some quotes from the show, so thank you to everybody who participates. We cannot thank you enough. Also, I wanted to take a moment to thank our very first sponsors of the show, Inertia Software, creating cutting-edge, highly scalable Microsoft technological solutions to the energy industry. Go to www.inertia-software.com. We'll have links to that in the show notes. So thank you so much for being a sponsor of the show. So without further ado, let's get the show kicked off with the very first question to Steve. What got you into development technology, sir?
Okay, before we answer that question, I want to first thank you guys for doing these podcasts and CodeCasts. When I first started listening to things like this, that's when my career took off, and I know there's lots of volunteer hours you put into it, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I started getting into coding when I was in high school because someone at the high school I was at had to teach computers, and my dad said, sure, why not me? So he went and bought all kinds of old VIC-20s and converted them to Commodore 64s, and we had like 20 of them at our house as he's getting them ready for school. And you know, I don't know if you ever played the game Hardball on the Commodore 64. It's just an old baseball game, very excellent. There are newer versions of it now, I guess. But I loved Hardball, and I wanted to keep my own stats rather than the stats that are in the game. So I had to write code to do that. So I wrote a Commodore 64, Visual Basic, or not Visual, just Basic app with a sequential database, inline code, all these go-to lines to keep track of my stats. And I just fell in love with it. And you can manipulate this thing to do whatever you want. That was the coolest thing ever. And that led into, you download Monopoly games on these floppy drives. You get them somewhere. I don't even know how we got floppy drives anymore. But you could change the code on those floppy drives. So I'd play Monopoly with my little brother, and he hated Monopoly. So he would not play it unless he was winning. So I wrote a hack into Monopoly I press a sequence of buttons, and he gets another $1,000 so that he wouldn't quit. And that's really how I fell in love with coding. Simple.
Yeah, that's actually a great story. It's funny that a lot of our guests are either TRS-80 or Commodore 64 based. starts. It's very surprising. I think we've had, JJ, 1 or 2 apples total?
Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 apples total. Yeah, yeah.
Very strange. Very, very strange. Very strange. Anyway, what do you do, Steve? I know you used to develop, but what are you doing now? I mean, what's your main role?
Yeah, I have a variety of roles as a consultant. So right now I'm doing a lot of agile project management, agile coaching, those kind of roles, trying to help teams get better results, basically, right? And agile isn't just a methodology. It's really about how can we deliver to the customer better, faster, sooner, more value, those kind of questions. And it's just trying to figure out how to do that and working with teams to do that successfully and to improve over time. That's pretty much.
Do you tend to see a lot of the culture shock when teams start doing that?
For sure. I was just reading the Microsoft article that came out today about their journey with Agile, and I understand there's some inaccuracies in there, as any article will have, but when people first have to change, it's hard, right? And that's, unless they want to change, then it's easier. But generally, change at an organizational level is hard. So one of the things that we've learned as coaches and as change agents is that starting where you are in a kind of Kanban approach is a really effective way to change. It's not about, well, here, let's go through all kinds of tools, let's immediately switch to Scrum, although sometimes people do that. I prefer to figure out where you are and then use retrospectives to improve little by little over time.
Okay, so what can you describe Kanban for those of us who don't know what it is?
My favorite definition of Kanban is visualize your work and limit your work in progress. Okay. Pretty simple, right? There's more to it, of course, but in a very basic sense, you've got it's a task list, only it's visualized with Post-it notes or index cards or in a tool. So you've got a list of things to do, you've got the 1 or 2 things that you're doing, and the list of things that you've done. And you visualize that in your room or on I use a personal Kanban board, I use a tool for it called Lean Kit. But in our project room, we just have a big wall with all kinds of, here's what we have to do, here are the things that we're working on that it could be in different states like analysis or design or testing. We actually have a few more states than that, but it really doesn't matter too much. Just use the states that you have. That's basics of Kanban.
So just so I can interject a little bit here, so we're talking about change, and speaking of that, what got you into Agile and understanding that? I mean, because there's a certain trajectory, right? That the beginner's not going to quite be in the Agile stage per se. So what got you into that?
I was on a project that was supposed to be Agile. It was my first Agile project, and it did not go very well. I hated it. We did all kinds of things wrong as we were learning, and I said enough of that. Either let's go back to do waterfall full-time and do it well, or let's learn what Agile is supposed to be, not what we did, and figure out how to do better. And so that's really when I started listening to podcasts, and et cetera, and figure out, I mean, there are lots of people, you can find articles of that, Agile is awful, and here's all the ways why you should never do Agile, but there is also a lot of things, here are things you could try to get better at it. And we just started trying things, got better at it, and realized waterfall is, maybe it had its time, I don't know. I would never want to use it again unless a client forced me to, because it's risky. Waterfall is risky, plain and simple.
I think waterfall has its place, but it's for very, very small applications that you get done faster than laying out an Agile project. And I'm talking like 1 or 2 day total coding projects.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Anything
that's bigger than that, you're much better going Agile anyway, I think.
Yeah, and you can still have a lot of the same discipline, right? It's not that it's an undisciplined approach. You can still plan, you can do some things, but it's the short feedback loops are incredible.
Well, and two, I don't think enough people take the time out to learn different avenues, right? Because we're all, in essence, creators, and it's important to understand and know what your tool set is, and know what tools exist, so that you're not pigeonholing yourself. Because I think as developers, we have a tendency to go to what we know as opposed to go to, the things that we may not necessarily know, or say, I don't have time to do that. But it's so important to stretch yourself sometimes, and really use those different avenues of approach.
Yeah,
right, I agree.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've tried to tell a lot of the clients that I've had and jobs is that Agile is named Agile for its agility, right? And if you try to shoehorn Agile as a process into what you do, it's not going to work. If you, and that's what I like about hearing Steve talk about Kanban, is that you actually start out at the most simplistic level and then add in the things that fit into your organization to make you successful. Is that not what you said, Steve?
Yeah, to a point. To a point. It's things that fit in your organization, or things that you might not fit but that you want to try. Right? Yes. You heard about TDD. You heard about pair programming. There's the manager who walks by and says, 2 people working, that's terrible, on the same thing. But maybe you want to try it anyways for a week up on the slide to see if it is a good thing. So, yeah, it's things that fit and things that you want to try to get better.
And you can quickly and easily remove the pieces that are giving you roadblocks that actually don't fit into your organization. I'm not necessarily talking TDD or whatnot, but some of the Agile processes where you have to go through hundreds of steps and do certain things, if you do it the picture-perfect way that the books tell you, those can be streamlined to 1 or 2 steps, and they still function exactly the same. And I know personally of a current company that's actually struggling with that because they're trying to shove, book-learned Agile at people into processes where they don't fit. And I think if they would have started from the grassroots, piece and just started with the Kanban board and laying it out and then continuing on and just kind of evolving their process, it would work better. And in fact, I worked at a company that did that. I've been in 2. One that completely failed because of Agile, but they used it as a crutch to actually allow them to fail.
Oh, okay.
And close friends of mine know who they are. I worked there 8 to 10 years ago.
Everyone's laughing.
Exactly. And the other company actually learned what processes very quickly did not fit in or that they did not need, and just yanked them out of the process and just continued down, and it functioned flawlessly, and it was excellent. So I think it's great that we were talking about that.
It's interesting. One of the hard things to do as you have any methodology is to remove things from your methodology, right? To remove some of those steps that might be getting in your way. And that's a great topic that, when you're doing retrospectives, when you're looking at your process and saying, what should it be, to also ask, what are the things in our current process that we could do without? Or at least let's try not using that thing for 2 weeks and see if we get better. Simpler your process, the better. I mean, it can't always be super simple, but in many organizations it can be a lot simpler than they're currently using.
Right.
Well, I can tell you that I've sat in a room with a Kanban-style board where we had, the parking lot, we had, or the backlog, we had the current process, and then we had the done, right? And we just move them across daily, right? And we do that inside a sprint. We'd break the sprint down and do certain things. So we kind of Kanban inside of an Agile project. But it allowed all the developers that were sitting in that area to know exactly what was happening, who was doing it, what was going on, and what was next. And it made everything flow so much easier.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And it's exactly it.
Yeah, so tell me, what are some of the biggest pitfalls that you see inside companies that you go in and try to help them streamline their Agile process, other than the removal part?
Sure.
I'll just talk, rather than the companies I go in, since I'm at a lot of conferences too, I'll talk to a lot about not just the companies I'm in, but people I talk to and the problems they're bringing up. Quite often, it's not the coding side, it's the people side. It's the management expecting certain things. It's treating estimates as commitments. It's management challenging estimates. There was a tweet the other day that they're looking for a project manager who knew how to challenge developers on estimates, which I think is kind of funny. But lots of management issues, more than it is the coders having issues.
I would tend to agree with that. One company that I worked at, and this was the company that actually did Agile very well, their upper executives actually started doing sprint or milestone-based funding. So at any point they could pull, at a milestone and say, this isn't working, it's done, let's start over again, before they wasted way too much money going down the line. And I thought that was actually very, very intuitive. And that, I believe I was there 5 years ago, they were doing that. And I thought that was very, very advanced at the time. And I haven't seen that anywhere else.
Yeah, that's pretty rare, I would say. A lot of companies, that's part of the problem, is they have this yearly budgeting cycle that, even in the worst extreme, where teams have to create a budget or create estimates for the first month of the year to kind of pitch their projects, and then they all spend the first month pitching projects, and then only a few of those get accepted, and of course they all have to be done by the end of the year, so you end up having the death march at the end, right?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah,
under guard, under watch.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not going to do what y'all think I'm going to do. Right.
That's right. But at least at that point they get a little agile. They co-locate everyone in a war room, right? So
right.
There's some benefit. Maybe some silver lining. But a lot of companies that I'm hearing, as far as in the Agile conferences and some of the bigger companies who are trying this, are moving to things like beyond budgeting and cost of delay to do their prioritization, which looks a lot more similar to what you're talking about. I think, okay, how do we make better decisions about which projects we do? How do we make better decisions on ROI? Maybe instead of choosing between project A and B, we should do a little bit of A and a little bit of B for a couple of weeks, and then see which one is getting us better results.
Right.
Yeah, because there's nothing wrong with going down the wrong path if it's a short stint, right?
Right. Right. We lost X amount of dollars as opposed to a whole bunch more. And let's be honest, I mean, the other problem here, the way I see it is once you take so much time into trying to manage this thing or set up into a structure and all this other kind of jazz, that by the time you get your product to market, it's almost either it's like no one wants it, or there was a better, faster way to have accomplished the same task, and that's a problem I think a lot of companies face.
Well, I think that's also part of our market is allowing us to do that. In the Microsoft article, they talked about we didn't need to be agile because none of our competitors were, right? So if all of your competitors are doing waterfall and going as slow or slower than you are, there's no need to be agile. But as more companies become agile and get delivering faster and getting results and finding success doing that way, it puts pressure on other companies. A friend of mine who did some consulting in Europe said that's exactly how it worked in Europe with the banks. The first bank went agile, and then all the others said, okay, now we have to too, because we have to keep up with their speed.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, as a hacker, the best way to learn, and we talked about this last week, was, and I know how simple of approach this is, but you just need to do things. You just need to just do it, break it, figure out what broke, and then figure out how to fix it and keep going. If you're not making those mistakes and doing those things, it's going to be so hard for you to be, well, for lack of a better term, agile, in your response. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm going to interject here just for a second, because my brain is like a little slow this week. But we talked about
your slow is like some other person's 100,000%. So go ahead.
It's called ADD, my friend, and I have to have it. It's got to be there. But anyway, we were talking about the culture shock and how developers are probably the least of the problem, and it's usually upper management when you're moving into the agile realm. They don't get what's actually happening, or if they do, they think it's something different than it is. Right? In my latest dealings with this, I actually saw the developers having a bigger issue with it. And the reason they had a bigger issue with it is because they did not understand, or they did not want to fail. And if you give them something and say, hey, make a text box and make it put text in it and hit a button and pop it into a message box, they had to have all of the specs for that. And they wouldn't do it until you gave them the exact size of the text box, the text you wanted to pop up, the text they were supposed to type in, and it just didn't work, because the idea of being able to do something creative was foreign. And I hate to say it, but in all of the Agile projects that I've been in, the developers have been very creative because they're kind of left to their own to build the pieces, and inside of a standard framework, of course, but because you always have the ability to refactor after the sprint, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's what makes a better software product. But I think that there's the developers, when you do have people having that issue, I think it's the people that don't understand what they're actually trying to do, because failure isn't failure. Failure is you didn't meet the need of the person that's asking it, because sometimes they don't know what that need is until after you deliver it.
Yeah, exactly. A friend of mine likes to talk about safety, and one of the questions that I immediately thought of as you're talking about this is what kind of culture do those developers work in? Do they have safety to fail, to do something wrong, or when they do something that's not right, do they have a QA department that hammers them and a customer that hammers them for not doing it exactly? And possibly they just gave up and said, well, I'm only going to build exactly what you want because I'm afraid of getting yelled at.
Well, and
that's one of the options, right?
Yeah, and, no, exactly. No, you're actually dead on, and I think it came from the waterfall methodology and them, these people being stuck in that for years. That's what they're used to seeing, so they weren't used to the switch. And I hate to say this, I tried to explain this to multiple execs, that it was actually a culture shift. Think about going to another country and trying to explain to them your cultures. They don't get it. It doesn't fit. You have to allow or explain to them what it is in detail, and then open up the failure, right? And explain to them that failure is not you failed, you're fired. It's we failed to deliver this spec because maybe it wasn't ferreted out, maybe it wasn't deliberate enough, maybe it wasn't written out well. But that's okay. The second round we can do it and we can have it dead perfect. Whereas with waterfall, failure is failure because you're at that end of the project, like you said with the death march, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. So, go ahead.
No, well said.
Oh, thank you. So, why don't you describe Agile coaching? And explain what those people do.
That is such a tough term. I know not everyone likes the term Agile coaching for various reasons. So in my world, it's just helping a team get better. So whether it's Agile or not, whether it's humanistic stuff or whether it's coding stuff, it's just helping a team get better, being more respectful to each other, delivering value to their customers faster and sooner, and helping them take small steps to get there. So,
I like.
Sense, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I like your word "small steps."
Yeah.
Because, that makes a huge difference when you can get them to break it down into a small step. I think. I agree. And I am far from an Agile person, so.
No, I think that works. That approach, doing things in small steps and breaking it down, works for projects to do things in small steps and build as you go, and it works for transforming organizations and teams. It works. I coach girls basketball. I have 3 daughters in the off season, I guess, or in the winter and summer, and it's the same thing there. You're trying to take a team from where they are to get a little bit better, to get a little bit better, to get a little better. You don't try to shove down the whole Scrum framework or all of Kanban or all of TDD and have them perfect on day one. You're just going to say, okay, what do we want to learn? How do we want to get better? Where are our problems? Do we need to improve our defense? Do we need to improve our free throw shooting? Do we need to improve our refactoring skills? And just slowly move and get better as fast as the team wants to. And sometimes that's big steps, but not always, right? And more of it's the pace of what the team can handle versus, the ideal where I want you to be perfect now. Well, that's not going to happen.
Everybody, it's that instant gratification culture, essentially. But I also, this question popped in my head. And I really don't want to lose it because it's good. Is the monetary, the monetary side, right? So a lot of the times, or not a lot of times, but now we're seeing, and a lot of the times when I'm talking to other developers, it's this sense of everything has to have a dollar amount. It kind of goes back to what Gus was talking about. How are meetings planned? Like, how do you coach to where a sprint planned, or or whatever the case may be, as a refinement meeting, one of those kinds of things, when you have this certain sense of like everybody feels the squeeze, and they want to get more from less, and they're like either the management or even the developers, everybody complains to a certain extent, and can't get across the finish line, because I don't think that those lines of communication are open, because everybody's so focused on the monetary value of that.
So you're talking the monetary value of the people in the meeting, and like,
Yeah,
everyone's $100 an hour?
Right. It's like, I'm going to let you all go tomorrow if we don't get this done, because we don't have the financing to continue doing this.
Well, anything like that, any sort of problem like that, Esther Derby is famous for saying, basically take it to the team. So that's why I love retrospectives done using silent brainstorming. We can say, here's our problem. We're going to run out of money. We're having too many meetings, whatever the problem is, and we all brainstorm together. And then pick something out of those brainstorms to say, okay, here's what we're going to change the next 2 weeks so that we don't run out of money, so that we don't have too many meetings. But it's a group decision, it's a team decision. It gets rid of, in my experience, the person who is complaining about process, or I wish we did it this way, because that's, no one ever listens to me. Well, now we are actually, and we're deciding together, let's go in this direction. And we do that every 2 weeks. Even if we make a bad choice, we can revisit that 2 weeks later, or sooner if possible, and say, okay, how did that work? Did we run out of money? Are we still having bad meetings? Are stand-ups still awful, as many are? Whatever the case, and adjust and reflect. It's a pretty cool process. That's my answer.
Nice answer. I like it. So do you have any particular resources that you, when you're doing your coaching and when you're, doing all the necessary things to, talk to either, project leads or companies or whatever, what resources do you give out during that process?
I tell everyone to go to stlouistechtalk.com and listen to everything there.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Well, after they do that, and after they contact the show and all that kind of jazz, what else would you say?
So it really depends on the question that they have, and also how they like to learn. So I try to get both. So I have a collection of resources that I keep on my blog that are just basic Agile 101 questions. Like here's a good article that explains what Agile is and how it was born from Martin Fowler. And articles like that. Or if they're having questions about what the heck is a user story and what is this invest model, I have an article that I can point to that gives them a great place to start. I also have a bunch of podcasts and books that I can point to. I have conferences. Some of us met here in the KCDC, right? So if you go to a conference and you want to learn, go find the sessions that talk to the kind of problems that you're adjusting to or trying to figure out, and then go to that speaker afterwards and say, okay, here's my problem. Do you want to go for lunch together? Yeah. There's so many ways you can answer these questions. So those are the ideas that I give out to people.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. Yeah, do things. Do things. If I've said it once, I'll say it a million times more, I swear. Just do something. Do something.
Exactly. Or you could just try to sit back and ignore the problem. That might work too.
That never works.
So
that just makes it worse.
Yeah, the one thing I want to stress out of that, Steve, is one of the things that you said was go up and talk to that speaker if you have a question.
Absolutely.
And I know a lot, like when I was a conference goer and not a speaker, I would be very shy about doing it because I didn't want to bother them, right? And I speak for myself and some of my other friends, and I'm not sure about you. I'm pretty sure you're the same way after that comment, but we want them to come ask us. I mean, that is a good thing for us. We enjoy talking about it. We enjoy helping them. We enjoy doing whatever we can for them. So otherwise we wouldn't be there.
No. I think you find the giving back. I approach people, and they've been willing to give of their time, either writing blogs or So I want to give that.
Yeah, me too. I'm in the same boat. Totally. Let's see here. So are there any actual programs or tool sets other than I think you mentioned Lean Kit, if I caught that right earlier, that you would recommend to our audience that are trying to get into the Agile framework that work really well? And what are the tools that you use day to day to set up projects and make sure that things are running smoothly?
Good question. I actually want to know that. Is he responding? Because I can't hear anything.
No, I can't hear anything either. Did you lock up, Steve?
Awesome.
Oh, there we go.
Let's try again.
Okay.
There we go. Got it.
Yeah. Oh.
So I just post Sharpies and retrospect.
Okay.
You guys hear me though?
Barely. You're cutting in and out just slightly. Is he cutting in and out for you too, JJ? Okay. I think we're having a slight bandwidth issue. Let's give it a second to remedy itself and then continue on. But I heard Sharpies.
Yeah, right.
And that's about all we heard. So if you could just redo that part, we'll see if we can't get it back.
Retrospectives.
There we go. Okay. Real quick question for you on that. How important do you think the post-mortem is in a sprint?
Mandatory, in my opinion. It's the
Well, what's the ratio? So Gus, I'll open this to you too. What's the ratio of time spent on the post side? So is there a ratio of some kind? Like, so you have a full project, you do a full circle, 100%. Say, 60% of your time was on the project, and the post is what, 40, 20? I mean, what would you say?
For a postmortem, I would say it's usually very small. It's usually an hour, half hour done at the end of a sprint where you give your demo, you have a postmortem, and then you do the sprint planning for the next section. Now that depends on the project, because a lot of Agile projects, it could be an entire day, it could be half a day, it could be 2 hours, it could be 30 minutes, just based on what they're doing. So, Steve, I'll open that up to you too and see what you think.
Okay, first, I just switched internet connections. Are you able to hear me now?
Perfect.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So maybe it was my bandwidth over here.
Could be.
So I missed some of what you said, Gus.
Oh, no. Okay, so JJ asked what kind of a ratio of time do we give to like postmortems? And my answer was it depended on the project, but it's usually a very small amount of time. It's go through, ask what we did wrong, how could we do it better, and that's usually the standard postmortem that I've been involved with. How about you?
Yeah, so I don't do postmortems at the end of a project anymore. So we're doing retrospectives every 2 weeks throughout the whole project. And for us, that's what we always start with. Every 2 weeks, you set aside about an hour. It's usually enough time. And that both length and the frequency will only change if the people in the retrospective ask it to change. So I know one group changed theirs. They want to meet every week instead of every 2 weeks. Another group that I'm working with, after 2 years of doing it every 2 weeks, they said, you know what, I think we're running out of things to change, and we're doing pretty well. Let's go to every 4 weeks. But that was something that came out of the retrospective. So it's really under the control of the team, but the default I start with is every 2 weeks for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now that the development cycles are getting shorter and shorter, and teammates have to play different roles like devs, test, business analysts, usability, what's the future for developers?
Oh, what a great question. I think it depends on what their interests are and what their passions are. for me, I want people passionate about every role on a team. It doesn't have to be in one person, it can be in multiple people, but we just want to make sure that we have all the roles represented and that people are passionate about those roles. So every role has to have at least one person passionate about it, if possible.
About what it is there. Okay.
That's right. So if I'm a developer and I love developing, good. And if we have an analyst who loves and not doing analysis but can do some testing and some coding as well, great. Because you do need to have that T-shaped skill set where you're great at one thing in depth or a few things in depth, but you also have a broad range.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that kind of feeds into what we were talking. Yeah, what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, where I've seen companies hiring more jack of all trades than.
Oh right, yeah, I now remember that.
The specific developer, and Brad Urani was nice enough to retweet that quote for me, which surprised me the other day. And
we're humbled, sir. We're humbled.
And I'm very humbled. But I think it's very true that you need somebody that can do a lot of things, or at least figure out how to do a lot of things very quickly, get them done, and then go on to the next task. There's also the removal of the prima donna developer that will only do back end or will only do this type of coding. And believe me, they exist. I've met them.
Right.
So I'm not calling out anybody. It's been years since I've actually seen one, but they do exist. I know they're around. But they're going extinct because of the agility path and the fact that people want this stuff fast. And that being said, it's speeding up everything, and that includes thinking, developing, learning, everything else. And that's why we're seeing a lot of this stuff happening right now. I believe anyway.
Well, and I've noticed a kind of almost like, so it goes back to that earlier question that I had, what's the future for developers, but what's the future for the other roles? I mean, because I'm seeing some disenfranchised, so they have to, in some cases, not really go back to the drawing board, but they have to maybe approach their own way of producing, right?
Oh, definitely. Wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah. So,
yeah, sure.
Another question that I have is, what do you think now is next after Agile?
That's a great question. My own opinion is Agile is wide enough as a direction, as far as, if you look at the manifesto, the first few words are, we are uncovering better ways. So is there a next thing after better ways? I think not. I think if you look at the manifesto, it doesn't lay out a lot of prescribed stuff. It says, let's keep looking for better ways and make sure we respect people while we do it. So I think the next thing is just a continuing evolution, whether it's more lean, more Kanban, more Scrum. I'm not exactly sure, but shorter feedback loops through that and more learning. That's the Agile mindset, right? Let's keep learning. Let's keep getting better.
Do you have your own teaser you can give us? Are you writing a book about a possible new version of Agile?
No, I don't have a new book about the next version of Agile.
That would be cool.
That would be cool. I'm sure someone is probably writing it. I have talked to people who have tried to convince me of the next best thing, and I haven't yet seen it yet. Usually they get more bureaucratic rather than less, and I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah, it gets really, in my opinion, and yell and scream at me as I say this from the Agile world, but everyone tries to better the mousetrap, right? And at some point you are stuck and you have to sit there and use the mousetrap that's been invented because the next one is just not feasible yet.
It's not there yet. Yeah.
Well, it's not feasible. I mean, like Steve said, he has not seen anything that he has seen that has come anywhere close to it. I don't, and in a couple of years we might have some technology or some idea that comes out, right, that may actually remove that from that barrier, and we'll sit back and go, wow, we should have thought of that 4 years ago.
Sure, but that still falls under the uncovering better ways, right?
Yeah, very true. It's still in the same methodology.
And I think one of the classic topics right now that's hot is no estimates, right? Some people think it's not feasible But other people are just looking at it and saying, is this a better way or not? Certainly there are a few who are loud on Twitter and who think it's a terrible idea and should never be considered. And, there are other people on the opposite and a bunch of people in the middle. But I think it's a really cool idea to explore. Where does it work? Does it work for everything? Does it work for nothing? And be open to those new ideas. I'm really a big fan of asking the question and seeing where it ends up. And that's Agile. That's uncovering better ways. You can't uncover something unless you go exploring a little bit.
Very true. Good point on that. Thanks so much for stating that, because that's one of the things that I think that makes our industry very fun is the exploration of new ideas.
Yes.
JJ is wholeheartedly on that one because that's what he does all day long. So
that's what I do all day long.
See, when you think of a lot of developers, and even my own early development career, that's what we did. We were looking for new tools, new techniques. I remember the first time I tried TDD and how fantastic it was. It made me fall in love with it on the very first time I tried it. And that's just trying new things. And now I've kind of taken a different angle, and I'm using that same passion to uncover better ways more on the people side and the process side. But for me, it's just as exciting to search for, is no estimates or some other technique better than what we're doing now? And, is this new technology better than the old one? Which ORM is the best? And exploring those things. It's the same passion as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, no, I would totally agree with you wholeheartedly on that statement. I'm glad you actually said that too, because that is very true.
Agreed.
And I don't think it's said enough either.
It also makes me feel better when I realize I don't code very much anymore, that I still have this passion, but it's just redirected in a different area.
Yeah. Well, now that we have your internet connection fixed, can you re-answer the question that I asked before that kind of got cut off? Is what tools do you use, daily to make sure that the project stays in course? Is it software? Is it hardware, as in pens, pencils, paper, Post-it notes, yada yada yada? What do you suggest that people use?
Is it GPS tags to watch all your little employees? Hey.
Yeah,
right. Go to the doctor, sir. No.
You could definitely do that. It is a very common question, and people don't always like my answer, but it's always the same. Post-it notes, Sharpies, and retrospectives every 2 weeks. And start with those tools and then build on there. I think it's a mistake to buy a tool or try a tool first and then mold your process into the tool rather than creating your own process and then finding a tool that supports it if you need a tool. There are certainly some great tools out there that support good process. Because I'm in consulting, I don't often get to choose the tool. I've chosen LeanKit for my personal Kanban, and I think it's fantastic, but I also know there are other good tools out there. I've used a bunch of the other tools. I think it's most important first, though, figure out what your own process is and should be, what works for you, and then add the tools secondarily.
That's genius advice that, let's see, 2 weeks ago, figured that out the hard way, because that's how I learn. I know, I was thinking, because I had a system, and I was trying to, based off of a framework, if you will, I was like, you know what, this is too hard. You're trying too hard to make this work, and instead of it work for you. And that's very important for everybody to learn right out of the gate, because the time wasted is it's so bad. Efficiency, man. People got to be more efficient, and having that attitude, that directionality, that focus, and that mindset, instead of trying to just plan the work the plan. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So do you use any tools like Microsoft Project or TFS or any of those things to do your daily stuff too, or is it just a LeanKit? Actually, I'm sorry, I should add version 1, Jira.
Let's get as far into the weeds as we can.
There's like 500 different tools, but I'll let you answer. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yes, right. The project I'm working on right now, we use Mingle for our kind of application management tool. We're also using a little bit of Jira. We're not using TFS because it's a Java project. I think we're using Subversion. Those are the 3 main tools. On this project, which is quite a large one, they were using MS Project originally. That's kind of died, which I did a little dance when it stopped. You can use MS Project on Agile projects, but how I've used it is, here's Sprint 1, it's 2 weeks. Here's Sprint 2, it's 2 weeks. Here's Sprint 3, that kind of stuff. I certainly don't like putting tasks and features into there and trying to plan them out that way.
Yeah, because they fail.
Exactly. I worked on a project once where I was doing Kanban, and it was a waterfall-ish project, but we were doing Kanban for the stuff we were doing. Project manager came by, loved it. It's like, this is cool, it's visual. I'm going to update my project plan every day to match the Kanban board.
That's his entire job now.
Yeah, and you know how long that took and how much time he spent and how much value he was adding to the project by doing that. So I don't think MS Project is a great fit for Agile projects. Maybe at a really, really high level, but I have not found it useful yet. I can do a Kanban board at a really, really high level too.
Yeah, I would almost use Project as a high-level module / program / integration / deliverable piece, right? Where you're saying you have, 8 months where you're going to build this product, right? And then the sprints underneath them lay in, and then from that sprint, everything else is pushed in through the other side, right? So they kind of meet in the middle, right, and kind of integrate.
My point is, I think that you wouldn't have to use Project for that. You could visualize that in other ways and not have to use our favorite Microsoft tool.
Yes, no, I totally agree with you on that. I'm just saying that that's the only way I could see utilizing that in the Agile space, because it just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
At least not to me.
So effective and efficient. No, I was just saying effective and efficient, man. That's how you got to approach everything. Effective and efficient.
Yeah, everything today is going in that mindset, right? Of being as efficient as you can, whether it be a car or a plane or whatever. That's what we're all looking for, and we're just looking for the tools that make us do that faster and better and easier, so that we don't have to spend all day updating things to make people know what we're doing.
And by the way, everyone has their own way, so if one more person tells me a crappy way, it's tough. You know what I'm saying? I mean, everybody has like the idea, right? Oh, this is how you do it, man. I'm telling you, you're like, oh god.
Yeah, what works for one project doesn't work for another, but the overall scope of being agile, which is what I think Steve and I discussed earlier, is what makes you successful.
Agreed.
So
yeah.
Anything else?
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
The beauty of people knowing their one way and retrospectives every 2 weeks is we can let the team try it for 2 weeks just to get that person to be happy and that we've tried it, and then we can all reflect together and say, well, was that the one way or not? And we get an answer. And it's only 2 weeks later or less, and now that issue's done and dealt with. We don't have to hear it anymore.
Or we can boo this man and throw things at him. No.
Exactly.
So, Steve, we always ask our guests to pick one question, and you have done so, sir. What do you see as the next technological niche?
When we talk about Kanban and visualizing our work, I look at wearable technology and visualizing our health as something that, some people I've seen, there's things like Fitbits, but taking it to the extreme and having clothing that measures your heart activity, your blood pressure, your calorie intake, your weight, all of these things, if you're diabetic, whatever, your sugar levels. And I wonder, I think we're going to go there with technology, but I wonder, is it going to help us, or is it just going to make us feel guiltier?
Well, I don't know. Let's ask Kevin,
or stress us, or stress us the heck out and give us a heart attack, one or the other.
I know.
Yeah. I think it's very cool for all kinds of medical applications. If your doctor wants to know your heart activities and up and down and your blood pressure over time, you can give them plug me in for a week and here's your graph. Awesome.
Yeah. Well.
Go ahead. Yes.
I was going to say that technology has gotten so advanced, and I'm so happy on that, because I remember when you have to pick up this big, huge thing and carry it. It looked like a big, huge purse or a lunchbox. It was huge. And now I actually saw a guy that was wearing like a cardio monitor. It was literally the size of a Nano, like an iPod Nano, the clip-on ones that are like an inch by an inch by like a micron, and I'm going,
right.
wow, just 10 years ago, those things were massive, right?
Yes.
And I think that's awesome. And I would totally agree. I think the wearable technology bit is coming up very quickly, and I think we are going to see a lot of that. And that kind of also falls into that whole Internet of Things too, right? Because they could be Wi-Fi enabled, and they could be connected, and they could have an IP address.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think this is important, to talk even when we're talking about Agile, because it's going to be about who can get stuff out the door and figure out what does and doesn't work, because you have a lot of things to consider: the network that somebody's on, the connectivity, how long it's been connected, push down. We had Rob Tiffany on. We were talking about crunching things down, being more efficient with your code even, and not messing around. Just writing to the machine, so to speak, going back to basics, if you will, and how important it's going to be for that. But I see wearables. A lot of people talk about wearables as like the Internet of Things, and like people hate those terms. But I think, like you said, I think that the actual applications are going to be beyond what most people can conceive right at this second, because we haven't had a wellspring of activity there, because we haven't had a lot of devices to write to, right? Like we've been able to like put together things with little kits and all that kind of stuff, but we're going to see more mainstream things that we can write to, and I think that's the most important thing that people need to keep in mind. And again, it goes back to the health stuff. If it saves one life, I think that's worth a lot of the heartache. I really do, and I think it's worth us being beta testers, because if anything, as human beings right now, especially in the Western Hemisphere, we're beta testers for the next thing. First it was vinyl, then it was mixtapes, and then it was whatever, and then it was CDs, and then it was Laserdisc and Blu-ray. Now we're all digital. We're always the beta testers, but we're working towards what I hope that is a common goal, and that grows that particular area, because I do see the medical applications of that, and I'm really big on health and fitness and stuff. So I really hope that it could be more a part of our lives. And I think the one bit, I know it was a joke, but I think the one bit about making us feel bad about ourselves, I do think that is kind of on that's beyond the technological ability to help you. Like, I think some people are just damaged, and I think they're just damaged. There's no fixing that crap. But I think if there's that chance that you can get to it while they're either young or while they're passionate about a particular thing, and then the next thing you know, they're into it. Those are going to be the ones that change like the world. I'm dropping the mic.
Okay, you're done. So any comebacks for that one, Steve? I'll let you have the floor for a second.
No, I think that was an excellent monologue.
It was pretty good, wasn't it? All right, so Steve,
I have my moments.
Yeah, I always ask all of our guests, because developers are a strange breed, right? We're into a lot of things that have absolutely nothing to do with technology or whatnot. You already mentioned your daughter's basketball teams and whatnot. But do you have anything else that you do away from the keyboard, or even with the keyboard? Hobbies, passions, anything like that you're into?
My biggest passion, though, I would have to say, is coaching, just in general. I love watching people learn, whether it's an 8-year-old girl or it's a 40-year-old project manager. And that's pretty fun to watch that happen, and to enable that, and to create an environment where people are learning and going, oh, I just did something cool. I learned a new skill. My life is better. Our game is better. Our projects are better. That's a lot of fun. So that's really where I do a lot of my focusing.
Yeah, I share your passion for that, because I like going out and teaching people, and I like seeing those light bulbs turn on. It makes my day.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. JJ?
Big smile.
Big smile.
Definitely.
No, I mean, I got nothing to add. I mean, I again, and I've said this before, I mean, we need more people like you in the world. We need more people like Gus, people just in general that are willing to take time out to watch other people succeed for the sake of just watching them succeed. It made profitable, that kind of jazz, but at the base level, like I said, it's all about success and about community, a sense of helping one's self by helping their community. I just think that's really important, so it's great. So speaking of community, let's talk about announcements. Gus, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's coming up next for not only the show, but you?
Sure. Next upcoming show, we're going to be talking with Brian Noyes, international speaker, Microsoft MVP, I believe, if I remember correctly. Great guy, Pluralsight author, etc. That should be quite interesting. Next week, I've got to bop up to the That conference in Wisconsin for a day. Do a session up there and pop back. Luckily, it's very close to my house. And then I will be in Dev Connections the middle of September, 15th through the 19th. I'll be down there for the whole thing. That being said, I think conferences are a big thing that people should go out and start doing. As Steve also mentioned, podcasts like ours, .NET Rocks, Hallway Conversations, Yapcast, just other podcasts, other things. These things teach us, and they're invaluable to people who need to learn or want to learn.
Yeah, because we're getting ready to go into like the TV season where you're just gonna stop. It's just not gonna happen. You're gonna be into that crap, and you're not gonna listen to stuff that's good for you.
Yeah, and I don't mind throwing out all these. Oh, and I forgot Southern Fried Bites. But these shows are the shows that, we may do something, they may do something. Both of them could pull out, a piece of Agile or a piece of, iPhone development or something that makes that connection for them, and I think it's great. JJ, any announcements from you?
Absolutely. I always am doing things. Strange Loop is coming up, and we're going to be a part of that. Also, St. Louis Days of .NET. We got the pre-compiler session, so we're going to be teaching people how to code Windows 8 apps from start to finish. Woo-woo. That's going to be a lot of fun. Also, next week, we have Daniel Gary, the maker of Instance for Windows Phone, and soon to be, I believe, QuizUp for Windows Phone. He's actually in Iceland, so we're going to have him talk to us on the show from Iceland. How cool is that? I'm really happy about that. He's actually the first in a line of guests in the future that are going to be from overseas. So we're excited about reaching out to that market. But before I stop talking, I would like to ask Steve, though, where can people find more about what you are doing, Steve, where they can find you, Twitter handle, website, all of those kinds of things. Tell our audience, please.
I think my Twitter handle is somewhere right about there.
Yeah.
S. Rogalsky, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you just Google Winnipeg Agilist, Winnipeg is where I live, you can find my blog and you'll find some information. That's generally where you'll find me.
Perfect.
Great. And do you have any upcoming announcements that you have coming? Conferences, anything like that? I know you helped coordinate a conference, so.
Yeah. This fall I'm kind of taking a break from traveling and staying home for a few reasons, but one of those reasons is a conference that Gus is coming to in Winnipeg. It's called SDEC, S-D-E-C, SDEC 14 this year, and it's, I think, our 6th year of running this conference in Winnipeg, and we get a lot of speakers in, including Gus. Corey House is coming in to do some Agile architecture talks. It's mostly
Corey House.
Yeah, exactly. It's mostly lean and agile talks, focused both on process and on coding and architecture. So if you're interested in that, we have 2 great keynotes lined up. Linda Rising, if you've been to a couple of Agile conferences, you've heard her speak. She's just so much fun to listen to and has some great things to say about Agile mindsets. And Michael Doc Norton, who is he works at Groupon Engineering, and he's coming to talk about some of the stuff they do there. And it's in October 20th and 21st and 22nd.
Okay.
So that's the big I'm looking forward to.
Cool. And what's the Twitter handle for that one and the URL? Or we'll actually post the URL in the show notes, but what's the Twitter handle for that developer conference?
SDECONF.
Okay.
SDEConf.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that our listeners that don't have video got that as well. So perfect.
Sure. And one last thing, speaking about what's next in technology, one thing I've been looking for and dreaming of is someone to build me an app on my iPhone that I can take pictures of a Post-it note wall, and it puts them all to text for me. So if anyone wants to build that, let me know. I'll tweet the heck out of it.
Search for Office Lens. See if it's out for the iPhone.
Yeah.
Office Lens?
Yeah, Office Lens.
Yep. Office Lens.
Does it actually capture the text?
Like it's supposed to.
Okay.
It does for me. and on my 1520 it does for me. I mean, because I don't know if you can see those whiteboards behind me. I got like 3 whiteboards behind me. I'm like, always writing whatever. But it does a good job of capturing everything that's on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might have just made my day, so I'll try it out.
And it's from Microsoft, so I'm not sure it's on an iPhone, but I know it's on Windows Phone, and I've seen it on Android. So I'm going to guess that if it isn't out now, it will be in the future. Works pretty well, actually.
Make sure you put that in the show notes.
We will definitely put that in the show notes.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
All right.
The last thing I wanted to say is, for those of you listening, please, if you have a Windows 8 machine, go download our STL Tech Talk Windows 8 app. It's out in the store now. It's for free, and we're really proud of it. Alejandro Ramirez, and he did a phenomenal job. And we also have a Windows Phone 8 app, so go download that as well if you're on Windows Phone, if you're the other person that has a Windows Phone besides me. No, I'm just kidding. But if you have that, go download that too. I joke because I love it. And also, thank you to all of our listeners, to both CodeCast and STL Tech Talk. July was our biggest month to date. It was a phenomenal month for us as far as download numbers and views go. We cannot thank you enough from the bottom of our hearts. It was really amazing to see that, the interaction, people interacting with our site, interacting with the show, all this kind of stuff. Also, if you go to our website, at the bottom of the website, there's this thing called push-ups, and if you click on it, there you can stay on the site and interact as a social media type thing. And it was developed by Dan Lohman, a guy who's in St. Louis. It has a team of developers in St. Louis, and it's gorgeous. And they did a really good job, and we met with them. So thank you for taking the time out again, Dan. And everybody should check those guys out. That's Push-Ups. I'm not going to say we're going to have links in the show notes, because if you go to our site, it's at the very bottom bar, so you're not going to miss it. Let's just say that. But it's gorgeous, and I just wanted to thank everybody, and I just wanted to thank everybody for the downloads and everybody that I met last week, and thank you again, Steve, for being on. Man, you were a great guest, and we'd love to have you back in the future.
Yeah, I definitely second that. We've had lack of agile stuff coming across this show, and I'm very happy to bring that to the masses, because I think that the agility piece is a real puzzle for some corporations, or even people for that matter, and I think that we ferreted a little bit of that out for them, and hopefully they have a clearer picture because of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was a blast doing this.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we can't thank you enough. And so, guys, what a wonderful show. Thank you again for being on. To all of our fans, we love and thank you for your support of the show. From the entire STL Tech Talk crew, good coding. We're out.